Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I have just received the result of the secret ballot vote on draft decision 40com7a.13. Number of absent committee member is 1. Number of blank ballots 8. Number of valid votes 12. Majority required is 8, and we have 10 in favor of this draft decision, 2 against, and 8 abstention. So the result is the draft decision 40com7a.13 is adopted by majority. As chairperson of the 40th Committee of the World Heritage Committee, I was looking forward sincerely to have a consensus on this draft resolution. I very much regret that our committee has missed the opportunity to adopt the decision by consensus this time. Hopefully, for the future draft decisions, this committee will come to a consensus on this item. But I was... Ambassadors, ladies and gentlemen, as we all know, we have a very tight schedule for this morning session, and we have to complete our job before noon today. I will give the floor to the member countries for very short interventions, if I may request. And I have to announce that I would like to give the floor to the observers only that are party to the issue. Parties concerned. So the ambassador of Lebanon is asking for the floor. I give you the floor.
Just seconds, Madam Chair, to thank you for your dedication towards consensus, and of course, thank you for your patience. It shouldn't have taken that much time. Thank you very much.
I thank you. Representative of Kazakhstan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, we express our gratitude to you and members of the World Heritage Committee for the efforts to find a mutually acceptable solution for the sake of reaching consensus on the proposed draft decision of the Committee, Old Town of Jerusalem and its walls. But with regret, we want to note that text which was nearly agreed by the concerned states again is adopted by means of voting. This is a clear indication that the issue of protection of cultural heritage within our organization became hostage to political disputes. Our main task in the framework of committee is the preservation of the cultural heritage of all humanity for generations to come, regardless of the political situation in this or that part of the world, and sometimes in spite of it. Kazakhstan, as an initiator of the International Decade for the Rapprochement of Cultures, firmly consider unacceptable to involve UNESCO into political games. Otherwise, we can plunge into the organization of endless strife and lose its main purpose. We urge all parties, what may have been sharp conditions, to show a constructive approach and to reach mutual acceptable solution. We appreciate and support the efforts made by the World Heritage Center of relevant UNESCO and on protecting this site and organizing with this purpose relevant expert meetings and we urge the relevant parties to follow the spirit of the Convention concerning the protection of cultural and natural heritage. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Representative of Kuwait, you have.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The delegation of Kuwait would like to thank you and like to thank the member countries who voted for the resolution. However, Madam Chair, we would like to express our reservations concerning the legal procedure applied that caused us to waste time. And we would like to express our reservation concerning the politicization of this issue. I have a question which is perfectly standard when it comes to protecting cultural heritage.
Thank you. Representative of Cuba.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson, and we want to thank you also for your leadership on this particular issue and for your initial proposal by trying to adopt this resolution by consensus, in which Cuba, of course, supported it. We would like also to express our sentiment that we will need to pay, we will, I think that. Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. I stress that we will, I think I will start again all over, just a very brief statement, just to be sure that it's been correctly heard. We were saying that we really appreciate your leadership on this, and this particular proposal, mainly the intention to have, as usually we have been adopting this resolution by consensus. We fully share the comments made by other colleagues in the sense that we need to be very responsible of the important work that this committee and the whole organization has on the protection and conservation of world heritage. And we need to take into account that whatever decision we take here will need to be on that precise principle taken. So we didn't like the way it was on procedural issue, but for the sake precisely of this, we just go along with the request of the rest of the committee, just to reaffirm the fully support of Cuba to this resolution and to the important work that this organization is doing and has to do in the future. Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson.
Thank you. Representative of Tunisia.
Tunisia has the floor. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I would like to pay tribute to your seeking for consensus and for ways to move forward with our work despite the loss of time caused by these procedural issues, which take up considerable time and resources to be examined. Tunisia, as a country which holds high the values of dialogue and tolerance as immutable principles, can only pay tribute to this consensus-based decision. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Representative of Indonesia.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Indonesia is one of the countries that steadfastly committed to resolving the prolonged conflict between Palestine and Israel. We support the two-state solution living side by side in peace, based on the international law and parameters set out under the UN resolutions. We always stress the importance of the impartiality of the international community in resolving the Palestinian issue and pushing the peace process. However, we do not forget that the political issues are beyond the mandate of the committee. The mandate of the committee, along with the objective of the convention, is to give protection and to safeguard the heritage sites, not to discuss political issues. In this regard, we are of the view that the decision adopted should not be based only on the historical rights of Thais, but it has to clearly stress the factual need to conserve the old city of Jerusalem and its walls. We regret that the draft decision that has been discussed and raised consensus before has to go through a political process. However, we appreciate all the members of the committee, the World Heritage Center, and you, Madam Chair, for the effort and the support for this item. Thank you.
Now, I see no more members asking for the floor, so I give the floor to the representative of Israel.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, you have just adopted yet another absurd resolution against the State of Israel, against the Jewish people, against historical truth, and one which stands in complete and utter contradiction to all values which this disintegrating organization is supposed to stand for. All this at a time when forces of radical Islam are destroying the history and legacy of many nations, demolishing mosques and churches, and not even sparing archaeological sites. All this at a time when the State of Israel is the only nation in the region which upholds these values, protects these places, while allowing freedom of worship equally to all religions. If it were not so sad, we would find it funny that an international organization established for the purpose of documentation and preservation of history and heritage is extorted into being used as a tool to rewrite the annals of history. The battle for Jerusalem did not start with the last vote, nor would it end with today's. Israel is sovereign in Jerusalem and shall continue to exercise its sovereignty there, while Palestinians and other Arab nations continue to toy with imaginary and absurd resolutions, which put to shame those who place them on the agenda, as well as those who raise their hands in favor. Jerusalem's futures will be determined by the one and only historical truth, one which we will stand by with deep determination, willing to pay any price. The fate of this resolution shall be no different than that of UN Resolution 3379, adopted in 1975, which equated Zionism with racism. That absurd resolution was cancelled 16 years later, but the moral stain still remains on all those who adopted. It might take years in our case as well, until the Jerusalem resolutions are eradicated from the annals of this organization. In 1975, it was Israel's ambassador to the UN, the late Chaim Herzog, who tore the paper of the resolution to shreds on stage in front of the entire world. I have no intention of doing it in front of you today, not because of your dignity, nor because of the dignity of this organization, but simply because this resolution paper is not even worth the energy needed for tearing it to shreds. It will be much simpler and a lot more appropriate to place it in its rightful place, the garbage place of history. And this is the garbage, Madam Chairman, and this is the resolution, and this is the place for it. On the one hand, it will become one with similar resolutions adopted with regards to the Jewish people. On the other hand, it might get a bit crowded between uncountable UN Human Rights Council resolution, the UN in New York resolutions, UNESCO resolutions, and other diabolical ideologies for the destruction of Israel, devised by past empires and dictators not worthy of us mentioning them, all of which have this in common: they all disappeared off the stage of history, existing no more, while the people of Israel is alive and well, and the blue and white flag with the Star of David, Magen David, is waving above Jerusalem, our eternal and united capital. Like any Jewish groom in the past 2,000 years, on my wedding day, just before giving myself to my beloved wife, I swore before one and all, if I forgot you, O Jerusalem, let my right hand forget its skill. Im eshkachech Yerushalayim, tishakach yemini. As long as Am Israel chai, Jerusalem and its history will never be forgotten. Thank you.
Thank you. I give the floor to the representative of Jordania. Jordan, you have the floor.
شكرا سيدة الرئيسة. أبدأ بتقديم الشكر لك سيدة الرئيسة.
Unfortunately, there is no interpretation from Arabic, so we will wait until the end of the presentation.
Then I'll translate from...
I have to remind that there is no interpretation
I'm
in
sorry,
Arabic.
I'll speak in English. Let me start, Madam Chairperson, by thanking you so much for trying to spread the spirit of consensus inside the organization, our organization. I would like to express also my sincere thanks to all members of this committee who voted in favor of the consensus and in favor of adopting the draft resolution as well. All of you know that Jordan is the voice of moderation and balance and is playing a major role in the stability of the Middle East. Therefore, we, as a balancing factor, are always seeking consensus, and this is what we have worked for in the past at least 4 months to reach this consensual draft decision, but unfortunately it didn't work, although we have exerted so many efforts to reach this noble goal. I would also like to state that this resolution is based on a legal argument. It speaks about the international law and how to apply the international law. It speaks about the illegality of the Israeli occupation to East Jerusalem, where all we agree upon. It speaks about preserving and protecting the status quo, which is the mandate of this organization, keeping the status quo and preserving the status quo, which is a major role that this organization has to promote, is to keep the city as it was before the Israeli occupation on the 5th of June, 1967. We are playing this role as well because His Majesty, the King of Jordan, is the custodian of all the holy places in Jerusalem, and therefore we feel ourselves obliged to continue playing this compromising, balancing, and just role with the support of all members of this committee. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I give the floor to the representative of Palestine.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I should like to start by thanking our Director General for the very clear support that she gave to the option of a consensus resolution. I should also like to thank our chairperson for her support for this notion of consensus and for all the efforts that she has had to make throughout this rather eventful session, it must be said. I should also like to pay tribute to my European colleagues. Whether or not they voted for this text, it was a consensual resolution that was presented by our European colleagues in Istanbul originally, and I wanted to pay tribute to the open-mindedness and constructive approach of our European colleagues who in this event, I think, have made a very important contribution to seeking consensus and finding a solution to problems which may be acute and difficult, but which can be solved through dialogue. I would be in very bad faith if I were to say that I was very surprised by the reaction of the representatives of Israel. On the other hand, what I would like to emphasize is that I must say, perplexed. A storm arose some time ago because we were calling for a vote for a resolution on this city of Jerusalem. And today we come with an open mind to seek a consensual agreement, but the consensus in turn raises a storm of indignation. None of us are naive here. We understand the reasons for this anger, which in our eyes is completely unjustified. The reason is that the Israeli party is trying to politicize religion, as was emphasized by my colleague from Jordan. This is not about religion. Rather, it is about breaches of rights, given the scope of the mandate, the competencies of UNESCO. To conclude, what I would like to say is that all of this is now behind us. The Arab delegations, our two Palestinian and Jordanian delegations, have affirmed through the acceptance of this formula, which was suggested by our European colleagues, a question of principle, namely that consensus is fundamental. And we see this as a portent of things to come. In other words, our door is open. We will continue to work on the basis of consensus. And I think it will be clear to all which is the party which is trying to politicize in very dangerous ways the issue of religion, and which is the party which is trying to operate within the confines of UNESCO's mandate. Thank you, Madam Chair.
On my list is United States of America. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As an observer to the World Heritage Committee, the United States takes the floor to state that this item should have been defeated. These politicized and one-sided resolutions are damaging the credibility of UNESCO and greatly hinder the important work this body is undertaking to safeguard and preserve our diverse world heritage. These resolutions are continuously inflammatory and one-sided to the point of ignoring the historic connections of all three religions. The holy sites of Jerusalem are important to the peoples of all three monotheistic faiths, Judaism, Islam, and Christianity, and this must be fully reflected through resolutions presented at UNESCO. Member states of UNESCO must focus on core priorities, such as preserving cultural and natural heritage, and in doing so, respect the interests and histories of all people. We only wish that all of our fellow members of this organization would reach the same conclusion we have, that these politicized decisions do not further the mandate and standing of UNESCO. UNESCO is engaged in activities around the world that are critical to the preservation of our world heritage, and yet so many in the international community are unaware of these efforts, which are overshadowed by reports of biased politicization in the organization. These resolutions undermine support for the very legitimacy of this organization. Going forward, we once again urge all members of this organization to fully embrace an approach in which we can all work together in a manner that embodies the values and core competencies of UNESCO. Thank you.
Thank you. I see no more requests for the floor, so we can move to the next agenda item, which is item 7.